So as we begin with the prophet Joel, what we are presented with is has in a sense, the judgment on Israel of basically you have the several calamities happening at once. You have locust swarms, which were very familiar phenomena in the ancient world, and you have a drought evidently on top of that. And the prophet Joel, is essentially the message that he's bringing is the fundamental connection between the relationship of God's people to God and their faithfulness to God, and the status of the created order. That is to say that the prophet Joel draws the Lord through the prophet Joel is drawing a connection between the chaotic state of nature, kind of nature not doing its intended thing, the purpose God's purpose in creation is that it would produce wine, it would produce grain, it would produce oil, the symbols of joy and a feast and feast giving in the Bible, and that the purpose of creation is to produce abundantly. And so when the creation fails to do these things, in a sense, it's a creation that is in chaos, that is in a state of brokenness that mirrors the brokenness of humanity. And perhaps at no other time in human history, in some ways it's interesting. I wonder if the environmental movement and our keen awareness of the imbalance in the created order that human activity can create is finally bringing back the biblical wisdom of the fact that there is a connection between human activity and the state of nature, and that these two things, both things, need to be redeemed and will be redeemed in the new creation. That's as Paul says in the letter to the Romans, that the whole creation is in agony, is in birth pangs, waiting for the new creation, awaiting its redemption. And in a sense, the thing that the Christian witness brings to the table, in addition to the scientific witness, is that the human activity that affects the created order is not just petrochemical, it's also moral. That human beings engaging in violence, oppression, degradation of the human person, that human moral actions have an effect on the created order just as much as burning fossil fuels. That and not that fossil fuels aren't happening, or that it's a both and, it's all of the above. And that's the scriptural witness. And so perhaps in this time of environmental awareness, we finally may gain a hearing for the scriptural witness that humanity and the created order are not somehow separate, but are intimately linked, and that God's relation to us intimately involves a relationship with the creation itself, and that when one is out of whack, so is the other. So we pray to God, we ask God in his mercy to begin the process of redemption, both of ourselves and of the good created order that God has given to us, to redeem it from its chaos, from its poverty, from its estrangement, so that both humans and the created order in which they live both produce abundantly. The one, the fruits of the earth, the other, the fruits of righteousness. A reading from the prophet Joel. The word of the Lord that came to Joel, son of Pethuel. Hear this, O elders, give ear, all inhabitants of the land. Has such a thing happened in your days, or in the days of your ancestors? Tell your children of it, and let your children tell their children, and their children another generation. What the cutting locust left, the swarming locust has eaten. What the swarming locust left, the hopping locust has eaten. And what the hopping locust left, the destroying locust has eaten. Wake up, you drunkards, and weep, and wail, all you wine drinkers, over the sweet wine, for it is cut off from your mouth. For a nation has invaded my land, powerful and innumerable. Its teeth are lion's teeth, and it has the fangs of a lioness. It has laid waste my vines and splintered my fig trees. It has stripped off their bark and thrown it down. Their branches have turned white. Lament like a virgin dressed in sackcloth for the husband of her youth. The grain offering and the drink offering are cut off from the house of the Lord. The priests mourn, the ministers of the Lord. The fields are devastated. The ground mourns, for the grain is destroyed. The wine dries up. The oil fails. Be dismayed, you farmers. Wail, you vine dressers, over the wheat and the barley. For the crops of the field are ruined. The vine withers, the fig tree droops. Pomegranate, palm, and apple, all the trees of the field are dried up. Surely joy withers away among the people. Put on sackcloth and lament, you priests. Wail, you ministers of the altar. Come, pass the night in sackcloth, you ministers of my God. Grain offering and drink offering are withheld from the house of your God. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.